everyone. Welcome to another edition of Countdown. It's a huge week for Basketball Australia and for the Jayco Opals and for the Boomers as well, because the farewell series has been run and won. The Opals defeating Brazil and the Boomers defeating Greece across the three matches. Fantastic performances from both sides. Today on Countdown, what we're going to do is we're going to look back at the farewell series and check out where all the matches were won and lost and what the big storylines were coming out of it. We're also going to, with our Countdown conversation, we're going to talk to Guy Hand of AAP, who has been covering the series as well. We're going to catch up with Jayco Opal, Rachael Jarry, and we're also going to have the Countdown Beatdown, where we answer your tough questions about both sides on the road to London. But of course, joining me today to go through all of that information and get everything out in the open, Rachael Sporn, that needs to be out there, is a triple Olympian, my ABC commentary colleague. Rach, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here in person today.
Absolutely. It's much nicer to have you here rather than on the Skype, as we had you back in, I think, the first episode. Yeah. What's been the biggest thing for you about the farewell series? What's been the most impressive thing on or off the court?
Do you know, I've actually been really impressed with the defence in the front court from our big players, because I've been waiting, I've mentioned in commentating, for Erica D'Souza to really show how she can play. But I think Susie Bakovic, Cambridge Jackson have done an amazing job on her and have really troubled her inside. And I guess Isiana Marquez, really impressed with the Brazilian player. And, you know, because we haven't seen Brazil a lot, you're not sure who is going to shine, but she certainly has. And I guess just the teamwork, the chemistry that's happening with the Opals, you can see it really developing, and that was the whole point of the farewell series, to really make a statement, and I believe the Opals have.
Off the court, I've got to say, I think the crowds have been fantastic. I mean, we've had, I think, essentially sellouts at all venues. The doubleheader at Hisense, and plus Geelong, State Basketball Centre at Knox, and also up in Bendigo.
I just think an Olympic year helps so much because everyone's so excited. You know, the quality of players, the high-profile players that the Boomers and the Opals have. You know, everyone wants to see them play in Australia because so many play offshore. So the opportunity is really limited to do that. You know, Lauren Jackson wasn't in the WNBL, and here she is now. So, you know, she's such a huge draw card. And as well for the Boomers, like so many of those guys are playing, excuse me, particularly over in Europe. Paddy Mills coming back from the NBA. Oh, it was just such an exciting atmosphere at Hisense. I've got to say, I know that this is a Basketball Australia production and I'm pumping up their tyres, but I've got to say it was actually a lot of fun, really, for me as an independent person to be there at Hisense. It was, and I think the international feel was really there. You could really notice the difference from a domestic league to that international feel, and it actually felt like this was a great, you know, felt like a FIBA proper tournament, and I think that was really healthy, and the crowd was sensational. As you know, it was hard for us to hear and commentating because to have that many people there for a women's game, you know, we wouldn't have seen that since Sydney 2000, so just fantastic.
So, just thinking about the Jayco Opals specifically, you mentioned you're really impressed with the defence of the front court. Any individuals that have stood out for you? Belinda Snell was fantastic in Bendigo. I thought that was perhaps the best performance of the series. What about you?
I would agree, and we have to mention that Belinda Snell has adjusted to a new role because she's been a starter for the Opals for a long time, and she's had to adapt to coming off the bench, and she can be that impact player. And, you know, speaking to Graffy, the whole point of that is to get that real offence off the bench. Otherwise, we're too defensively minded. If, you know, for example, Jennifer Screen is a great defender, so put her in the first five, got Belinda coming off the bench, and that will change probably as the Olympics go through. The starting lineup may change depending who we play, and very impressed with Liz Cambridge in the first game, ready to go, mentally prepared, and really showed the crowd what she's capable of.
And there was an extra load on her in that first match as well, because Lauren Jackson was the late withdrawal with a slight hamstring concern, which, you know, she allayed all fears, I think, by coming out and playing well later in the series.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, it was great to see Lauren Jackson, you know, back in the second game, because the crowd always want to see her play, and we're commenting before that she's such an amazing target, and you can just see that everyone looks for her because they have such belief in her, and she never really lets you down. She's quite an amazing athlete. And Jenna O'Hay, I think she's showing that yes, she's a starter, and, you know, she's been putting up great stats. And, yeah, just the enjoyment factor that you could see the Opals having occasionally that doesn't always happen in an international match because it's the pressure and the intensity. It was good to see them having fun too.
I want to move on to the Boomers, but I've got to come back to something you just said about Jackson and how, you know, she's so reliable, she's such a great target, everyone just looks for her. Do you think there's a risk in that? coming down the stretch, and have you seen that risk at past World Championships or Commonwealth or Olympic Games? She's always had Penny as the foil,
yes,
except perhaps the gold medal game in Beijing when Penny was hurt. But do you think there's a risk in down the stretch? Too many people are focusing on Lauren.
It's funny you can mention that, because I can actually probably go back to Athens when we were guilty of that, absolutely, in the gold medal game against USA. And because...
Sorry to bring up bad memories.
No, that's all right. But in the third quarter in that match, I truly believed we were going to win a gold medal, Darren. We were leading, and it was amazing. And I was like, oh my God. And with sport, it can change so quickly. And I think because particularly USA, all the players play against Lauren in the WNBA, and they know how to scout her. So that was, I think, one occasion we were guilty of absolutely that.
Okay, so hopefully Coach Graff will have drilled into the team that there are other options. Now the Boomers, 3-match sweep over the Greeks. They dominated each and every game. It was a very inexperienced Greek lineup that came out to Australia, because we know that the senior players in the Greek lineup were still at home or back over in Europe preparing for the qualification series, because they haven't yet qualified for the Olympic Games. So a pretty tough road. What do you think that Brett Brown and the team will take out of this? Because obviously it wasn't against a full-strength team, but it was still important, I think, for them to come together, because they haven't been together as a team very much.
Yeah, and Brett Brown was quoted as saying they just have to make the best of what they were given. And they can make it all about them rather than the opposition, when they know that they are not going to play this team again. It's going to be totally different. So, it's getting to work out which combinations work well on the floor, getting their offence really gelling and working, what defence is going to work for us as well, experiment with a bit of zone, or just try so many things, because they weren't ever going to lose the games, and just get everyone's confidence up.
And I guess it's been interesting as well, because Paddy Mills has come into the squad late, Brett himself has come into the squad late, Joe Ingles came into the squad very late, and David Anderson, who could be the starting centre in London, or at least will be very high, a very significant part of the rotation, still isn't in the team. What about those personnel issues? I mean, you would have been through that before, with teams coming together late. How hard is that to combat? Yeah,
it's actually become the norm.
Yeah, right.
So I remember before Athens, we only had Penny Taylor and Lauren Jackson join us, I think, 3 days before we went to the Olympic Village.
Okay.
So it can be something that is going to happen. And then, of course, you have these wonderful players who have to stand in as the 11th or 12th player, and then they get sent home.
Daniel Kickett, feel for him on
so there's a lot of
different
I guess situations that occur, but it's something that you become, okay, this is how it is, we can't do anything about it, and adjust as quickly as you can.
All right, now the final word in this segment of the program we have to give to Christy Harrower. On Tuesday, she played her 200th game in the Jayco Opals singlet in front of a passionate home crowd in Bendigo. She was a little bit emotional about it all.
She was. I thought that was a beautiful moment, because you could see how much it meant to her, and we'd interviewed Bernie, her dad, during the game, and you could see how proud he was and how much it meant. And I think it's wonderful that there may have been that little bit of manipulation to make it a 200th in Bendigo.
Over in Europe, a couple of DNPs.
And I didn't realise that until Bernie said that. I said, great work. I think it's just fantastic that they were able to do that. And to see the emotion, the raw emotion in a player like that, gosh, basketball's meant so much. Well,
the best part is, Rach, we can relive it. Here is Rach's interview with Christy Harrower after the game in Bendigo on Tuesday.
Well, Christy, can you try to explain what tonight meant for you?
Oh, Rachel, you made me cry now. I've been good all game. This is unbelievable. It just, to come home and play my 200th game.
I had to ask you, Christy, you are loved by this crowd, and I think it's so fitting that where your Olympic dreams started, you're back here, and you're going to go to London. Sandy Brondello is the only other player to play in 4 Olympics. You're going to do that with Lauren Jackson, so it's a pretty amazing time for you.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty special, and I was lucky enough to start my Opals career with Lauren, and I've been able to play with 2 of the best players I think Australia's ever produced in Lauren Jackson and Penny Taylor, and of course you, Rachie. But it was great to come home. It's a bit of a I mean, I'm lost for words, really. With the crowd that was here tonight and the support that I get here in Bendigo, it's just unbelievable. And, you know, Jenny Screen and Laura sent me beautiful messages before the game, and you just don't realise how much you touch people and you know, how much experience you can give back to people, and especially at this level.
And do you feel that this is a pretty special group, Christy, to you know, this could be your final hurrah internationally? You're pretty pleased with the 11 other girls you've got by your side?
Oh, for sure. You know, like, Olympics is the ultimate dream for any athlete, and, you know, I'm lucky enough to have gone to 4 with 3 silver medals, and, you know, this is pretty special. I think, you know, I'm going to try and make the most of it and you know, stay focused on what I'm there for, knowing that it'll be my last. And we've got some great girls in this group. We've got a great youth, we've got great seniors, and we just got to make sure that we get better every game and just build towards the medal rounds. And, you know, we had a disappointing 2010, so we've got to make sure we get back to the medal rounds now.
Well, Christy, congratulations. You are a true champion, and go and enjoy it. Well done.
Thanks, Ray.
Yes, wonderful stuff, Christy Harrower, and love the embrace right at the end there with Rachael Sporn, my co-host for Countdown today. We'll get more from Rach in a moment, but now to another Rach, Rachael Jarry, the youngest member of the Jayco Opals squad who is heading to London. She's been a fantastic player in the WNBL over the last few years, a member of the Bull and Boomers Championship side, of course, in 2011. And we caught up with her just prior to the naming of the squad to London as she looks to take her talents to the international stage.
Just 19 years of age, Rachael Jarry's rise within Australian basketball has been nothing short of meteoric. But even she couldn't have imagined the success she's had with the national team, the Jayco Opals, recently being named in the 12 that will head to London.
Yeah, it has been definitely a whirlwind. I think if you had have told me 2 years ago that, you know, everything that had happened to me in the next few years would have happened, I wouldn't have believed you. But yeah, I don't know, I just think I've coped fine and just sort of taken it in my stride, and yeah, sometimes I have to pinch myself, but yeah, it's all very exciting.
Adapting to the physical demands and the culture of the Jayco Opals program quickly, Rachael's game has grown in leaps and bounds.
For sure, I think there's such a great culture in the Australian Opals, and you know, everyone's very welcoming and we all just want to train hard, and yeah, I just love training against such amazing players that I've looked up to all my life, so it's great.
With London still a little way ahead at the time of the interview, Jarry was then thrilled about the opportunity to wear the green and gold in front of a home crowd during the farewell series, one of the greatest honours that an Australian athlete can experience.
Oh, it'd be amazing. You know, you speak to some of the veteran Opals and they, you know, it's rare that you get to play in front of your home crowd, you know, as for your country. So, yeah, it's an opportunity like you have to appreciate, and it would be amazing.
Coming out of a stellar WNBL season and into the London campaign, Jarry, still only a young Opal in the group, has needed to work hard to gain selection. London being more than enough motivation for her to put in the hard yards.
I think if an Olympics opportunity doesn't keep you motivated, then nothing will. So for me, like every training, every session, every strength and conditioning session I'm doing, you know, the Olympics is always in the back of my mind. Every meal I eat, everything I do. So I think I've done everything possible so far that I could have done, and I guess we've sort of mixed up training a bit, so done a few different things, so that sort of kept the interest there. But yeah, just the Olympics is the main goal.
Now it's time for the Peak Sports Countdown Beatdown, and my guest host, Rachael Sporn. The pressure is going to be on. You know this part of the program. The listeners, or the viewers I should say, have tweeted in some key questions to us. They've used the hashtag Beatdown. Not much of a tweeter yourself, are you?
I've never done it.
No, okay, all right.
I wouldn't even know where to start.
Well, Brock McLean's probably wishing the same thing this week. But anyway, look, we're going to get straight into these questions because a couple of people have tweeted in some questions and they are into the running to win the merchandise pack at the end of the Countdown series, thanks to Peak Sports. All right, question number one to you today, Rach. How do we think... By the way, 24 seconds on the shot clock, in case I didn't say that. That's why the pressure's on, okay? So how do you think that Coach Carrie Graf is going to divide responsibilities at the point guard position between Sam Richards and Christy Harrower, and maybe even Kathleen McLeod in London?
I think Christy Harrower will begin every game and see how her body's going as well, and that will be probably guided by Christy. Sam Richards, used in bursts, I would say, and I'll be interested to see how Sam goes, against the bigger guards internationally as well. And I know Christy's small. Kathleen McLeod used in the rotation, maybe late in a game if we are well in the lead, I would say.
Okay, so you've just got your shot away there at the end, which is very well done to you, your first crack at this. But I've got to ask a quick follow-up. Who do you think's going to be there in crunch time? Will it be Christy, or do you think there'll be times when Graffy might go for a different look with a Sam Richards, or even have maybe Jenna O'Hay sort of playing that sort of a role?
Again, I think it will depend on who the opponent is, but Chris, even from the farewell series, you can see that Christy is playing so well, and I just love her as a leader on the floor because she doesn't need a lot of direction. Yep. And we've seen that in the WNBL, and she can pretty much take the timeouts, and she knows so well. And this is her 4th Olympics, so I just don't think you can go past Christy. Okay,
what about the men's side of things? Peter Crawford, who has been a star in the NBL for many years and is better known as an athletic player, has really developed his three-point shooting and was a star for the Boomers in the UY series against China. Got limited minutes against Greece. What sort of a role do you think a player like that can have? Somebody who just can come in and play a specific role, whether it's sitting on the perimeter and shooting, being that jump shooter. How important do you think that is?
Look, incredibly important because they're probably really quite hard to guard. And by the sounds, it is a brilliant athlete. And I think an athlete is so important to have in an actual program because they can provide so much and just hard to scout. I think that's the main thing. And if they're really versatile, that's a really strong thing.
All right. Pressure was on Rachael Sporn, and no surprise, I mucked up her name, but no surprise that she lived up to the pressure and was able to withstand it. That's the Countdown Beatdown for this week, thanks to Peak Sports.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathleen McLeod from the Jayco Australian Opals here, putting a call out to all our fans to get on social media and support us on the road to London. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and check the Basketball Australia website for all the latest.
Okay, now it's time for the Countdown Conversation brought to you by Spalding, where my guest host Rachael Sporn and I are joined by somebody from around the basketball circles. Rach, and today we're honoured to be joined by the senior sports writer with the AAP, Guy Hand. Guy, welcome to you.
Hi there, Darren. Hello, Rachel. Good to talk to you both.
Hi, Guy.
And to you. Now, you've been covering the farewell series, both the Opals and the Boomers, but I want to start with the Boomers. What has been the best thing that you've seen this series from the men's side?
Well, there's been a fair few things that I've liked, to be honest, Darren, about the Boomers. I think they're a bit of a dark horse here. One of the things I like most about them is how deep they bat. I like the fact that they've got a lot of energy from beyond their starting five as well. They seem to bat a lot deeper than probably we thought they were going to, and there's been a lot of good energy that's come off the bench at times. It hasn't all been a case of Paddy Mills having to light it up or Joe Ingles having to light it up. They've had quiet periods, and then you get people like Matthew Dellavedova and Aaron Baines who've given a lot of energy off the bench. I think that's probably the thing that I've found most exciting about them is really what lies beneath that starting five.
And then, Guy, we have David Anderson to come back in as well, so that stands them pretty well, doesn't it, with a great player like him coming into the team as well?
It certainly does, and again, it's the same thing, Rachel. It comes back to how deep they bat again, because Anderson comes in there and you then have that situation with Anderson, Nielsen, Marriage. Do they play Anderson in the 4? Do they use him in the 5? He gives you some options as well. The starting 5 that they've used has been fairly solid throughout this. So Anderson certainly gives you something. The big question with Anderson, though, is how they can knit him in the time that they have remaining. Now, I believe Anderson will join them for the Gold Coast camp on July 7, and he'll be brought in for those last couple of games in Europe ahead of the games. And how they knit him in is going to be very important, but I'm sure that's something that Brett Brown and his staff have worked on fairly extensively leading into it.
Well, Guy, you mentioned the starting 5, and that is actually what we want to focus on today. Rach has some. We're going to should get the headphones out, like Family Feud, and give you some thinking music or something. But no, there are 5 weeks to go until the London Games, and what we do on the Countdown Conversation, brought to you by Sporting, is we focus on that number, and the number is 5. So, a simple question to you, Guy: what will the Boomers' starting 5 look like in London?
Well, I think we've seen Brett Brown's made no secret of that during the farewell series. We've had the same starting five in all three games that the Boomers have played against Greece. He's gone Mills, Ingles, Barlow, Nielsen and Marriage for all of his games. He's started them for the second quarter as well. And I would think that's a fairly solid indication that that is what his thinking is. The big trick, as we were saying, is about Anderson. Now, where does Anderson fit back into the scheme of things here? It's very interesting. I have asked Brett Brown twice about this in press conferences over the week about the use of Anderson and I guess where he sees Marriage fitting into the scheme of things here. And he has been very, very emphatic about this. He has said, Al is my starting centre. Both times I've asked him, you can't get really much more emphatic than that. So I guess then, if Anderson is going to come into that starting five, it means he would have to come into the four. And I would have thought he probably won't use Nielsen, or he won't change Nielsen. So the reality is maybe Anderson does come off the bench, and the starting five is what we have seen in the Greece games.
Well, it will be interesting. The Opals, Rach, a little bit more flexible, as we've already spoken about on Countdown today. A few more options for them.
Yeah, and we saw...
But you need to pick the five.
I do, don't I?
The pressure is on you again.
Well, sort of going along with Graffy's thinking as well, Jackson, Batkovic, O'Hay, Screen, Harrower, and I would probably throw Snell in there as well. And she also shown that, Hodges could be thrown in there too. Not that Laura played a lot of minutes in this series, but the flexibility is there. I just love to see Cambridge coming off the bench and just scaring the hell out of the opposition after 5 minutes. And, maybe they've made a sub as well and they've got to come up against Cambridge. All
right, well, that'll be good. But look, Guy, I've got to ask you before we let you go, and Rach might have a view on this as well. In all your experience covering basketball in particular, but a whole range of other sports for the AAP, does Alex Marriage have the biggest chest of anybody that you have ever seen in sport? And I'm talking about in proportion to the rest of his body. I'm sure there have been, bigger wrestlers, maybe The Rock or somebody, but Alex Marriage, seriously, that is a seriously large rig.
Oh, he is a huge man, Darren. He is incredibly huge. And the thing is, you don't actually know how huge he is until you stand next to him. He is a giant man. I've covered a lot of AFL in my time. I've never seen anyone this big, ever.
Yeah, he's a very big man. Guy Hand, Senior Sports Writer with the AAP. Thank you very much, and we look forward to reading your work from London during the games.
No problem, Darren. Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Rachael.
Thanks, Guy.
And Rachael Sporn, thank you very much to you. It's been wonderful to have your company in the studio next to me today with Countdown.
Good to be here, and I look forward to seeing it online.
And we look forward to hearing your comments from London as part of the Fox Sports commentary team. Really looking forward to that. Rach and Andrew will be over there. All right, that's just about all we've got time for today's edition of Countdown. A big thanks to our sponsors as well. The Australian Sports Commission, Jayco, Spalding, Peak Sports and Sporting Pulse. We look forward to your company again next week.